This is my bearded dragon Inferno, and today we're going to talk about the good, bad, and ugly about bearded dragons. Welcome to Animal Spotlight. Pogono-Viniceps, also known as the bearded dragon, is one of the most recognizable animals in the reptile hobby today. Now, starting off, we're going to talk about the size of this animal. They are considered medium-sized animals that only get around 18 to 24 inches in their max size. Generally, males get a little bit larger than females, but it is all up to the individual on how big they end up getting. Now let's move on to temperature and humidity. You are going to want a basking temperature of around 100 to 110 degrees. I like to use halogen bulbs because they get significantly warmer than just, say, a normal bulb. For the cool side of the enclosure, it should be around 80 degrees or potentially just room temperature. Now, if you can't get the animal's enclosure up to 80 degrees, it does not necessarily matter because bearded dragons in their native range, which is Australia, usually they will get lower temperatures than just 80 degrees, and they will supplement their own heat with the basking bulb when they want. For the humidity, this is an arid to desert species, so you want to keep their humidity around 30 to 40%, but when they are shedding, you might want to boost that up a little bit and give them a spray down every once in a while. I use this 39-inch 14% UVB bulb with the associated light fixture for it. Now, most UVB bulbs will come with a sheet that tells you exactly where you need to put it compared to the height levels of your enclosures. Now, does that work? Absolutely, but I don't like it because it becomes a guessing game of, is it high enough? Is it low enough? Is all of the UVB getting through the mesh into the animal's enclosure? So if you want to be 100% correct, you should get one of these. They are expensive, but it is a UV meter that tells you how much UVB your animal is getting. Next, we're going to move on to substrate. When my bearded dragon was little, I used slate tiles as the substrate for the enclosure to make it easy cleanup and for the animal not to have any impaction problems with eating their substrate. But I did move on to a different mix of substrates. A mixture that I like to use is a mixture between topsoil and sand. Now, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, sand is terrible. It is not bad if you use it correctly. If you want to use sand, use play sand instead of construction sand or other types of sand. This makes sure any sand that is potentially ingested by your bearded dragon is not later impacted by it. Now, Inferno's full-blown enclosure uses a mix between sand, topsoil, and excavator clay. Excavator is a type of sand to clay mixture that you can use just on its own to create very cool backdrops, but if you use it inside the substrate of the enclosure, it can actually give some rigidity to the soil, so if your bearded dragon likes to dig, it will actually hold its shape and not accidentally collapse on your bearded dragon. But the excavator is expensive and it is a total add-on, so you don't necessarily need it. Bearded dragons are omnivorous, so they will eat a mixture of bugs and lettuce all together. But the amount of food from insect to lettuce might not exactly be equal. For juveniles, because they are growing, you want to have a higher percentage of insects, around 70% to the 30% of greens. But when they fully mature, that switches from around 70% of greens to 30% of insects. Most bearded dragons will not eat their lettuce, so you have to be careful you are not feeding them too many bugs and they are not getting the appropriate greens. Thankfully, my bearded dragon is awesome and he will eat his greens, but most don't. Some of the main feeding sources you can feed your bearded dragon are crickets, superworms, and dubia roaches. Now, I do not keep any crickets on hand at all times because they are kind of a pain, but I do keep dubia roaches in a dubia roach colony, and if you want to watch that video on how I made it, click up here. So his main diet is dubia roaches and superworms. And if you only have one bearded dragon and don't want to get a mix of vegetables to mix it all together, try getting a pre-assorted mix of vegetables. It's really helpful because it already has them pre-chopped up and they're quite nutritious for the amount of mixed greens inside them. For their feeding schedule, I feed my bearded dragon superworms or dubia roaches every other day, but I offer him a salad every day. For young bearded dragons, I would suggest feeding them every day to every other day, depending on how big your animal is and how much they actually eat. Next, we're going to move on to my favorite part, enclosures. The average size for a fully grown bearded dragon is a 4x2x2 enclosure, and like everyone says, bigger is always better. Now, as a juvenile, you can start them off in a 40-gallon, but just reminder that they will eventually grow to need a 4x2x2 enclosure. You are also going to want to have plenty of places where your animal can climb, hide, run around, and do all those kind of things. Now, if you don't want to have to worry about their nails getting super sharp and having to clip them yourself, I would suggest adding plenty of rocks and hard things to their enclosures so when they run across them, they naturally will scrape them down and won't have as much of a problem with it. Now, let's get on to handling. Now, as you can see, they are great at handling. Now, each animal is its own individual, but overall, most bearded dragons are very handleable from the start and don't need much handling to maintain that tameness. If you have a male bearded dragon like I do, you might encounter something like head bobbing. They do that when they see another bearded dragon, which could be their reflection, and they want to either fight it off because it is another male coming into their territory, or it's a female and they want to breed with it. But all in all, they are great animals, especially to have around kids, because usually they are very tame and like to be pet. Now that moves us on to availability and prices. Well, if you go on Morph Market, you are flooded with thousands and thousands of different bearded dragons. I would almost call them the ball python of the lizard world because there are so many and so many different color mutations and morphs and line bred traits that you can pick any different color you want. But if you're not looking for a particular color or size, places like Snake Discovery's Adoption Island and all those type of adoption agencies have hundreds of bearded dragons constantly rolling through their doors because they are one of the most common pets people buy. And unfortunately, when people get out of the hobby, it's usually the first one to be sent to an adoption center. Along with the enclosure, the animal itself, and everything that goes into the enclosure, most likely it will cost you a little over $500. And well, for a medium-sized lizard, that's a very good price to pay. Well, after talking it through, do you want a bearded dragon? He is one of the greatest animals that I've had. He is great with kids, always ready to be held, and doesn't move a lot. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon members who have helped me do everything like feed this guy, everything that happens here at All Around Reptiles. But with that being said, that is going to do it for this video of All Around Reptiles. If you want to see more like this and more Inferno, subscribe.